Number 10. Bloody Mary. We all know the legend. Say Bloody Mary 3 times into a mirror and she'll come kill you. Crap, I've said it 2 times already, gotta be careful. This is a popular folktale generally used by one kid to scare his or her friends and feel cool. But she was recently introduced in the Batwoman comics, and they did a pretty good job of making her look about as scary as we always imagined. I get that she isn't objectively the most terrifying of villains, since, you know, there are a lot of much freakier and more dangerous villains, but considering how freaked out many of us were by the legend as kids, there will always be a horrified place in my heart for Bloody Mary. Oh crap, I said the name again. No, please! Number 9. Killer Croc. While he wasn't particularly scary in the Suicide Squad film, Killer Croc would be absolutely terrifying if he was real, and closer to the comic version. Over 10 feet tall, with razor sharp teeth, looking like a freaking crocodile chasing after you trying to eat you, yeah, I would be expelling waste through every hole in my body. Sometimes villains just trigger that fight or flight response in us, and this one definitely does. Not that I think our ancestors evolved to be afraid of giant humanoid crocodile monsters, but when I see him, my biology definitely tells me to kill it with fire, or run and hide. Probably that last one. And it probably wouldn't work. Number 8. Id the Selfish Moon. Id is just such a creep. Look at him. At best, he looks like some creepy dude who watches people changing through a telescope, and at worst, he looks like a murderous serial killer. And unfortunately, the latter is probably the more accurate option. Because if a planet doesn't excite him enough, he blows it up and snorts the dust. Something tells me if a giant angry moon showed up and asked us to entertain it or we'd die, we'd probably be a wee bit spooked. Because nobody wants to be blown up and snorted. I mean, I assume. Maybe there's someone out there who's into that, but I'm sorry, if that appeals to you, you're weird. Number 7. Saduhem. Saduhem is a Hellboy villain, one of the evil spirits known as the Ogdruhem. He takes on a number of different shapes, each scarier than the last, although normally he presents as a giant terrifying creature with tentacles and claws and suckers and all sorts of nasty things. He kinda looks like Cthulhu, who I really wanted to put on this list but wasn't sure if he'd count as a supervillain, so I went with Saduhem instead. Either way, coming upon a giant tentacle monster that just wants to eat me would be a pretty scarring experience. Number 6. Martin Mad Dog Hawkins. This is one dude that not many people know about, but he is just bone chilling. He doesn't look as scary as the others on this list and isn't as powerful or accomplished as others, but he is absurdly creepy and terrifyingly psychopathic, not to mention something that could actually happen. Hawkins was actually the man who drove Amadeus Arkham, the creator of Arkham Asylum, insane when he broke into his house, killed his wife, sexually assaulted his daughter, chopped off her head, and put it in a dollhouse as an April Fool's joke. Seeing such a twisted human being who just wants to kill women is really freaky, and the worst part is that it could actually happen. There's even a reference to him in the Arkham Asylum game where a headless statue has Mad Dog written on it. If you want to see more about him, check out Arkham Asylum: A Serious House on Serious Earth. The art is pretty intense. Number 5. Doomsday. Doomsday is definitely one of the freakiest villains out there. First of all, the dude looks terrifying, so dark and evil and spiky. His scary appearance may well have been one of his adaptations. However, not only does Doomsday look scary, but in reality he would be essentially unstoppable. Especially in our world where, you know, we don't have Superman. Once he adapted to our bullets and explosives, it'd be damn near impossible to even scratch the creature. If Doomsday was around today, it's safe to say we'd all be living in fear, although on the bright side, we probably wouldn't be living that long anyway. Yay, silver lining! Number 4. Carnage. It was kind of a tough decision between Venom and Carnage. I didn't want to have both, but definitely needed one of them. I ended up choosing Carnage partly because he looks a bit freakier and partly because he's just way more insane and murderous than Venom. Sure, Venom kills dudes and threatens to eat their brains, but a lot of the time, especially recently, he takes on more of an anti-hero role, or a hero role. On the other hand, Cletus Cassidy, and by extension Carnage, is just a straight up serial killer. So not only does he look like the stuff of nightmares, but if you ran into him, he would almost certainly kill you. But if you're lucky, he'd kill you quickly. Number 3. STYX. STYX, one of the personalities of Legion, is one of the villains that is scary both in appearance and in his abilities. First, just look at him, he's freaky. He's like the Silence from Doctor Who meets Slender Man, except he has a mouthful of sharp teeth and he's naked. So yeah, he's absurdly creepy looking. But what's more is that he can absorb your freaking soul. Just by touching you, he can absorb your soul and control your body, even able to enter the minds of powerful telepaths like Professor X. This is particularly scary for me because as a kid I always had nightmares about a dude called the Brain Sucker who sucked out your brains by touching you. And STYX is eerily similar, so he scares the crap out of me. Number 2. Joker. Joker is definitely not the scariest looking of villains. Eerie? Sure. Crazy? Definitely. Funny? I mean, sometimes I guess, but generally he doesn't look particularly funny. But the Joker is just so damn insane, and murderously so, that you honestly have no way of knowing what he'll do next. Will he just tell you a subtext-heavy joke about people walking across a roof? Or will he tie you to a chair, torture you, and make you laugh yourself to death? Who knows? This unpredictability, along with his undeniable genius, makes him absolutely terrifying. And if, on top of all this, you're also afraid of clowns, God help you. Number 1. Scarecrow. Considering fear is kinda the MO of Scarecrow, it's no surprise that he'd find himself on this list. Scarecrow certainly isn't the scariest looking of villains in his normal state, and when played by Cillian Murphy, he's downright dreamy. But he has a few tools to terrify at his disposal. If you ran into Scarecrow and he used his fear gas, suddenly he would become your greatest fear. And you know what they say about people's greatest fear? They're scared of it. Yep, people say that, it's a thing they say. Plus he can turn into a scare beast, a pretty freaky looking monster that naturally emits his fear gas. Now, the Scarecrow is pretty scary, but not as scary as this Scarecrow. That's me, I was in Wizard of Oz. Spooky.
Coming in at number 10, we've got ZEBEDIAH KILLGRAVE. There are just so many reasons this sociopath is considered extra creepy. First of all, his skin has been saturated with experimental nerve gas. This chemical compound has caused his body to become purple, giving him an especially sinister look. Something about the color purple seems to really freak people out. Sells horror novels too. Of course, just being purple isn't enough to land on a list of the creepiest villains of all time. No, Killgrave has a whole bunch of awful tendencies that really put him above the rest. The very same nerve gas accident also altered his body chemistry, bestowing upon him some fascinating powers. This violent villain is able to control people's minds using pheromones, leading to some horrible situations. Over time, he learned to use his mind control powers to meet his own needs and became quite cruel and merciless. As one might expect, he makes a lot of folks act way out of character in order to please him. The most famous victim has to be Jessica Jones, who he kept as a sex slave for months on end. Jessica Jones was one of many poor people who the Purple Man forced to do gross things against their will. And if that isn't creepy, I don't know what is. Coming in at number 9, we've got Solomon Grundy. Zombies are creepy, especially when they have human intelligence and seem to keep resurrecting. Solomon Grundy checks all sorts of boxes, from living in sewers to pulling his own limbs off during combat. Imagine the smell too. Grundy has taken on many different forms and caused all sorts of different problems, but you can be sure whatever iteration he shows up as is going to be either scary or nasty. Pallid flesh, drippy liquids, and a need to be as malicious and aggressive as possible. All these things add up to a truly creepy villain. Coming in at number 8, we've got Victor Zsasz. Serial killers are creepy. They've captured the imagination of the nation for ages now, and Victor is no exception. This Batman nemesis is a lanky lunatic who carves a mark into his body for every person he kills. There are marks covering his entire body at this point, so take that as you will. He was once the son of a wealthy couple, but after they died in a boating accident, he became addicted to gambling. Betting everything, he squandered his wealth away and realized that his life was totally devoid of meaning. Before he could kill himself, a homeless man menaced him with a knife, and in this person's eyes, Victor saw emptiness. He took this as a sign that his life was nothing. He and everyone else on Earth were being controlled by forces beyond comprehension. So now he goes around and helps people shuffle off their mortal coils, also known as murders people. A person who's lost all hope for humanity is a dangerous one indeed, especially when they enjoy slitting throats as much as Victor. Coming in at number 7, we've got Muse. Imagine if Banksy was a bloodthirsty maniac. Then add in crazy combat skills and general imperceptibility. Now imagine all these traits packed up into a disgusting, pale, shrivel-faced lad. Now that's the recipe for Muse. A pained artist who uses human blood to create gigantic murals. He loves to create spectacles. And by spectacles, I mean grotesque defilements of the human form. He creates all sorts of bloody art, and then while politicians attempt to prevent access, he kidnaps the judge. He gouges out Blind Spot's eyes. He even breaks all of his fingers, just himself, when he realizes Daredevil wants the horrifying art to stop. And then when he's taken to prison, his creepy creations don't stop. He breaks out, slaughtering some guards in the process, and begins making pro-vigilante pieces adorned with the bodies of cops. Brutal. Coming in at number 6, we've got Professor Pig. Anyone in a pig mask is creepy in my books, but Professor Pig takes it to a whole new level. He's obsessed with perfecting the human form, and of course his idea of perfect is totally warped. To make someone into his ideal person, he replaces their faces with horrible doll faces. Making their form perfect isn't enough though, and he also tends to lobotomize them. Then they become weird, brainless, hypnotizable zombie people. Holy smokes. It almost feels like a Richard Traeger situation for those of you familiar with Outlast. A skilled surgeon absolutely defiling the human form in search of a twisted view of perfection. And he's just totally hideous, with or without the mask. That's a face not even a mother could love, which may have something to do with his insane behavior. Coming in at number 5, we've got the Brood. Oh man, every universe has to have a crazy conqueror race like this. Just a species of constantly consuming creatures who only exist to reproduce and drain planets dry of all their resources. The Brood has been around for thousands of years and have nests on planets across the universe. If they were mindless, it would be one thing, but the Brood enjoy causing pain and suffering. They live for the terror that their infection inspires in hosts. It's like if xenomorphs were even more prolific and loved to cause as much horror as possible. These things are bad news. They'll consume and consume until nothing is left. Coming in at number 4, we've got Nightmare. What's creepier than a Fear Lord? This entity reigned over the Nightmare realm within the Dream Dimension. This demon is able to snag a person's astral form while they're asleep and bring it into his Nightmare realm. And being somewhere like that, not fun. He's kinda like a super version of Freddy Krueger. Nightmare will always exist as long as there are beings that dream. Even if he is defeated, he can never be truly destroyed. Watch out for him tonight. And finally at number 1, we've got PARALLAX. Also known as the embodiment of fear itself, PARALLAX exists to cause horror all across the universe. It has existed since the dawn of time and has a history of causing whole civilizations to destroy themselves. The fear and anxiety this fiend can induce literally rips apart societies. PARALLAX is so good at causing fear, it can easily frighten folks like Superman. A being of pure energy, it has no physical form and it will try to change into whatever will scare its target the most. Oh my goodness. And it's yellow in the Green Lantern universe.
Number 10, Man-Bat. The Man-Bat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his Man-Bat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be Man-Bat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the Man-Bat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these two monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 8, Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC extended universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose. And these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity. Number 7, Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So, Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine. And in fact, anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality-altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good. But it's still worth it.
Number 6, James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he is not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. DOLLMAKER. DOLLMAKER has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the death of the family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the dark multiverse somewhere in their films, and the dark multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines.
Number 10. Vermin. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now, it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides. However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan, since his introduction, has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the One Below All in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 7. Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian Elder God would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal, however, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the spirit bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to tide yourself over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. GORR the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, GORR was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, GORR completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, GORR was needless to say pretty mad, and when the one god asked for help, GORR actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as GORR the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, GORR absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as GORR absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life: Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now, I doubt GORR will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor: God of Thunder number 2. Number 4. Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight, of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now, I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Number 3. The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now, I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the Negative Zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four number 1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates number 1. Number 2, the Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power, elastic and multi-sensory skin. Designated Weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pyre went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pizer took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the skinless man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force number 21. And finally, number 1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so I feel like we won't get to see this character on the big screen anytime soon.